Hey guys, Akariss here, bringing you a brand new Fire Emblem Heroes video. Today's video is a bit different, as you can no doubt see. Today we'll be covering a skill that probably everyone forgot exists. So, I feel like this skill is worth talking about, but may not be as good or as bad as you think it is, and might have a certain place depending on what meta we fall into. But I'm going to show you how you can use it, in what example cases it's actually functional, and maybe some more. So sit back and enjoy, guys. Alright guys, so this is Obstruct. If you don't know what Obstruct is, basically it has a 50% HP condition and it doesn't allow enemy units to go by. That's pretty much it. Like, it doesn't allow units to go past an adjacent tile of the unit. So that may not seem really useful, but I want to show some examples of where this potentially could be good. If anyone has been following the Twitch and Discord, which hopefully you do sometimes, you'll know that a couple months back, I actually used something similar to this. Ashnard over here. Okay, now it isn't a plus 10 Ashnard, and it's definitely not having Wyvern Flight, and it doesn't have Plumeria as support. But I wanted to show kind of like the full circle effect here, which is that is like the ideal kind of unit I would recommend running it. But let me explain why you would use something like Obstruct, let's say over like QR or Guard Bearing or something like that, okay? So this is Ashnard, and Ashnard may not be, especially with a lot of flyers actually, may not be super good at securing kills because he can't run null follow-up, he doesn't have null C disrupt. There's gonna be a lot of units that basically hit him for free, and when you want to use a carry like this with supports behind, usually those supports might be in danger, and that's the use case of Obstruct, to protect your supports. So I was using Ashnard a couple months back, and I don't use him now because he's not merged, and I don't really want to invest in AR offense. Like, I don't want to spend the feathers and the grails for Ashnard. I may very likely bring this back, especially if I get like Wyvern Flight or the Rhine skill. But essentially what Ashnard functions here as is a like unkillable tank, can tank hits from a variety of units, including those that have dazzle or fire sweep effects, and not care. The reason you would use something like Obstruct is to essentially deny units from passing by. I actually think Mystic Boost is a solid B option. Well, actually, just go with Mystic Boost in the Seal and run Obstruct in B, just to keep that health value up, keep Obstruct running, and reduce damage from flyers. That's also pretty solid. It's not covered here, but what I want to really touch on is the potential supports you have and the map use case of how I use something like this effectively. Now, if you've been watching a while, you know that I used air with ward flyers way back as like a tank stacking option, and I used Bath Cam as well, HS Cam as a tank. Those metas have far come and gone by now. The reason something like air as a tank worked is because she had back-to-back-to-back bonus seasons, and all the mythics were like flyers at that point to synergize, including a second air and so forth. What I really want to think about here is more like, okay, so Ashnard in Astra season, probably where I'd put him right now, just because you don't have to deal with like Bramimond and you don't have no follow-up. It's really hard to really like take advantage of that. You can't like use allies as much, so that guy kind of puts a stink in this plan. But essentially a lot of super tanks that don't have access to no follow-up, no C, or you just want to experiment with, let's say, a tank that doesn't run that, Obstruct is a solid option. And here's what it looks like. So you have a pretty standard looking defense on the left there, as you can see: Elwood, Rolf, Thrasir, Mira, a dual unit, Eldigan, whatever, and plus Zeros in the corner. Now the reason that something like Obstruct could be useful, especially if you have Ashnard as a tank, is something like this. So watch the magic, guys. Okay, there you go. A star in 3 squares. A star in 3 squares, guys. Okay, the star is, think of it as like Ashnard, and think of the blue squares as like support units. Now, normally without Obstruct, Rolf would threaten that position. Rolf would just flow through and actually kill either of the two blue squares there. But by forward baiting like this with Obstruct, you actually give yourself more space to provide supports behind. And that's kind of crazy because you can get a lot of stat stacking this way. So below me is Plumeria. She runs Ward Flyers, Distant Guard, but as like obviously another support option, you'd have Lucina. Maybe Lucina's beside, and she runs another set of Distant Guard, Close Guard, Drive Attack, Drive Speed, whatever, Drive Defense, Drive Res, you name it. And then you even have like a third option there, which could easily be something like, you know, Naga or Altina also running Ward, Goad, and so forth. You see how the stats kind of add up here because you have that flexibility? That's why I would argue Obstruct is a decent option here, because you get so many stats given to you by being able to put supports in safe positions, as opposed to essentially risking like let's say you ran attack speed solo. That's 6 attack, 6 speed in Seal, and that doesn't compare to Obstruct, let's say having Lucina and like Altina giving you those extra stats through their C and Seals or weapon in this case. Additionally, you gotta also think about a map like this oppresses space and essentially might threaten your supports even far back into your building line. By being able to use Obstruct, you deny that space. I'm not saying it's the best option, because honestly it's more of like a sleeper skill, but it's a cool thing to think about how it could be used well. Of course, it doesn't really help against Lunge, which Elwood may very well use here, and it doesn't really help against you know, getting under 50% or just being unable to tank something, right? So that is a pretty big problem that I would say with Obstruct. Like, if you don't have the tank to make it work, it won't really work. But in a case like this, it very well might work, and it could be a good option depending on how much stat stacking you use through those multiple supports. The sky is the limit when it comes to this, and I definitely want to bring it back in some form when I commit to, like when I have the resources to spare to bring this back. I would love to hear what sort of tank options you would use in the comments below with Obstruct, because this is something that isn't really used or talked about much. But the reason a flyer is good is flyers just don't have those options. They don't have as many options. Now, to end off what we're talking about here, and of course like the wild card, is the essential counter to everything, okay? The counter to Obstruct. Of course, Lunge is pretty good, and usually a melee unit that gets danced might also threaten, but essentially a very good option as a counter is, you guessed it, Elwood or any melee with pass. I mean, it could be a range cav too. It could have been Rolf in this case if he was running pass. Could be, you know, just dance and then pass as well. But essentially, if Elwood was running just a rally here and he had pass, he would just go through and blow through your supports just like that. Now, I don't see a situation where this happens, because we would need to be running like some sort of Obstruct pass meta, or maybe Obstruct 4 happens, maybe pass 4 happens. Those skills get better. They have additional skills. That's where things get interesting. I've tried experimenting with both Obstruct and Pass, both on offense and defense, but I wouldn't necessarily say that they're the best option in any case. They're just interesting to think about, and definitely a very budget option that can work depending on what map is thrown at you. So hopefully, with that being said, you know, let me know in the comments below if this maybe got you thinking. This may very well be a new series of videos that I wanted to put out on skills that are not really thought about much. So in this case, Obstruct, and to a lesser extent, Pass, but I'm not really going to cover Pass much. Essentially, Pass beats the forward tank that's protecting its support, and there's not much more to say to that. You're not really going to use Pass on offense, ish. And yeah, so if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and please let me know what you think. If you like the series, if you want to see more videos like this, in the comments, and come join the Twitch and Discord as always. Thank you guys for watching. Much love. Peace.